Well, happy Thursday and welcome to another edition of 10 with Tom. Today we're going to be talking about a word that is not often used in sports, and that word is courtesy. When you think of today's modern athletes, courtesy is not something that usually comes to mind. We see a lot of athletes who've grown up in the me generation, where so much of what they do centers around me. And how much money can I make and how much fame can I have? Everybody look at me. To me, one of the best or worst, depending on how you want to look at it, examples of the me culture happened last year in the Egg Bowl between Mississippi and Mississippi State. And in that game, one team trailed by 7 points late in the game. They were going for a tie. Mississippi was the team that was trailing, and Mississippi State had the lead, the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, and when Mississippi scored a touchdown with just a couple of seconds remaining, all they needed to do was kick the extra point and tie the game. But instead of handing the ball to the official, getting back and getting his team set up for the extra point, the player that scored the touchdown decided he wanted to be cute, get himself on SportsCenter, and he crawled to the back of the end zone like a dog, and then he lifted his hind leg and pretended to pee on the goalpost. And that netted a 15-yard penalty, and the result of that was the kicker missed the extra point that would have tied the game, and his team lost, and that was the end. And so he did get on SportsCenter on the not top 10 plays, not the way you want to be on, but it was an example of the me culture really taking root, and something that we want to try and avoid. Excuse me. But as I'm thinking about the subject of courtesy in sports, most people know who the star athlete on a team is, and they're almost always in the game. You don't see them sitting on the bench much. And something that the star athletes have to deal with that a lot of other players don't have to think about is the idea of trying to maintain courtesy and being humble in the midst of their stardom. And the true test of courtesy comes from how they deal with some kind of conflicting situations. How do they react during those moments that they're taken out of a game so that a player with less experience can get a little bit of playing time instead of the star scoring more and more points? If a player is just talented and doesn't have character, they're going to demand that they get all the time they can so that they can score all the points they can. But if they're a true leader, they will exercise courtesy and they'll allow others to improve. And they will validate the people around them. And I think of three athletes today when I think about being courteous and helping others to grow in the midst of their using their abilities. The first is a guy who was not a great player, but he was a great student, and his name was Josh. He was on a basketball team that I coached, and I remember one time we were playing a game, and we had a fast break, and Josh was going to be a key element of that fast break as we came down the floor because we had a numerical advantage. But one of the players in front of Josh from the other team fell down real hard on the floor as we were running our fast break. That made our fast break advantage even better. But Josh stopped and helped give up our advantage to reach down and to make sure the player on the other team was okay and to help him up. Now, it kind of messed up the advantage we had. We didn't score on the play. And the coach part of me really wanted to be upset with Josh, but at the same time, how can you be upset with somebody who stops to care for another player, even a player on the other team? And Josh's actions were rewarded at the end of the tournament that we played in when they named they had a character award given to the player who exemplified the most Christ-like character during the tournament, and Josh received that award. What a great moment, and I was so proud of him, and the school made a big deal about that because that's what they were about, was living a life of character, and so that was a cool story. I had another player on a different team. His name was Jason, and Jason was a star on a really bad team. We had, because of some academic issues, we had a team that had one 10th grader, and then we had to play with all 6th and 7th graders and one 8th grader against a junior varsity schedule. So most of the teams we're playing are 9th and 10th graders, and we got whomped almost every time out. Had a couple of close calls where we almost won a game, but we really didn't stand much of a chance. But Jason was an outstanding player. The kind of kid that had we gotten him the ball every time, we might have had a chance. But Jason understood what we were all about and wanted to help the other players get better, so that as they got older and matured, that hopefully he could be a part of a team that was going to do better as well. And I can remember one night we were in a game, and a player, Jason, stole the ball, and we had a player wide open at the other end of the court. And instead of passing the ball to the open player, Jason took the ball the whole way down and made a layup. And I immediately called timeout. And I took Jason out of the game, and when he sat down on the bench next to me, I said, "Do you know why you're out of the game?" And he said, "Yeah, I do. I should have passed the ball." And I said, "That's right." I said, "Why didn't you pass it?" He goes, "Well, the other guy would have missed it." And he's right, he probably would have missed it, but he needed to learn how to do it. And from that point on, Jason never missed a beat. He did everything he could in practice and in games to make the players around him better, and was just an example to the other kids of how a star should perform. And what a great kid, and I was so impressed by that. Third person I want to tell you about was a guy who's a little more famous. His name is Steve Lindquist. Steve Lindquist was a swimmer, was a two-time gold medalist in the 1984 Olympic Games, was the world record holder for many years in the 100-meter breaststroke, also at one point held a world record in the 200-meter individual medley. Just an outstanding swimmer. And I had an opportunity one time to participate in an event, and Steve Lundquist was there as kind of the celebrity for the event. And a lot of times these celebrities that get paid for events, they come in, they collect a paycheck, they say hi to everybody, pose for a couple of pictures, and get out of there, because that's just not what they want to be about. And you even see star athletes a lot of times who are making millions of dollars. They'll come to a mall and they'll sign autographs, but you got to pay to stand in line for them to give you your autograph. They don't need that extra money. But Steve Lundquist came to this event, and he just hung out with all of us that were participating. And one of the things in this particular event was a 100-meter freestyle race. And so it was the first time I had ever swum at altitude. And I had been doing really well up until I got to Colorado. And I dove in the pool, and at the 50-meter mark, I'm dying. I was not used to altitude at all, and I'm thinking, I'm going to die. I'm never going to make it to the finish. Well, I did make it to the finish. I finished 4th. But that night, instead of going to a fancy restaurant or somewhere, Steve Lindquist hung around and had dinner with us. And he sat at our table, and he laughed with us, and he said, "I know exactly what you guys were going through." And he told the story of when he first came to the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. He came in as a hotshot swimmer, and the first time he dove in the water, his time in the 100-meter breaststroke was 10 seconds slower than what he had been swimming back home in the Atlanta area. And he said he was ready to get back on the plane and go home, but he persevered and turned into one of the world's greatest swimmers. But he shared that with us, and we laughed a lot, and he told stories, and he just hung out with us. What a class act. And I've always admired Steve Lundquist and the things that he's done and the way that he treats everybody like a hero, even though he's the one that has all the accolades. And so that's the kind of person you want to be. And it kind of goes with what we see in Scripture, that thing that Jesus taught us, to love your neighbor as yourself. Don't make the big deal about who you are. God's already done that. But help others to know how special they are. Validate them, make them better. And that's the kind of person you want to be. Romans 12:10 says to love one another deeply as brothers and sisters, and to outdo one another in showing love. And so, no matter what you're good at, make sure you take the time to validate the people around you, encourage others, build them up, draw them to where you're going. Because there's going to be a time in our life where we're going to need somebody to mentor us and to encourage us when we go through really tough times. And we look up to those people who are really good at what they do, and hopefully they're the kind of people that are going to draw us to their level. So remember to be courteous, remember to be humble, and have a great Thursday. Hopefully we'll see you this weekend. We've got a game day today, and if we don't see you today, hopefully we'll see you this Sunday. I love you guys, and talk to you next time on 10 with Tom.